countries the world had ever seen.
This victory ended the European theater in World War II. Little did America and the Soviet Union know, but the division of the city would help bring about one of the bitterest international relationships in history.
Welcome to the Cold War era. Welcome to the propaganda era.
The Cold War began after World War II. The main enemies were the United States and the Soviet Union.
The Cold War got its name because both sides were afraid of fighting each other directly.
In such a hot war, nuclear weapons might destroy everything, so instead they fight each other indirectly.
They supported conflicts in different parts of the world. They also used words as weapons. They threatened and denounced each other.
Or they tried to make each other look foolish. During the Cold War era, Soviet and American tensions were at their peak. During this time, every American citizen was conditioned to hate everything communist.
How could such hate arise?
The answer? Anti-communist propaganda.
The U.S. government manipulated the media and created a generation defined by their hatred of the Soviet way.
The U.S. tried to stop unethical communism throughout the world. Communism isn't necessarily a bad idea or theory, but it can easily be used in a horrible way.
When a dictator takes over, communism most likely becomes unethical, and the country turns into tyranny.
We see examples in the past in countries like China with their tyrant Mao Zedong.
You can also see communism went down the wrong path in Cuba, so the U.S. went into a war with valid justifications on how to liberate the world from communism and show them the Western way of democracy.
2. The Cold War was cold, which meant that there's no direct military engagements or fights. This means that there never really was a battle.
If there was military contact, then it would have been extremely deadly because of the nuclear and biological weaponry buildup that was made in the nuclear arms race between Russia and the USA. It most certainly would have started World War III. And considering that World War I and World War II went long ago, the Earth would have not been the same as we know it now.
There are a few events that could have helped make a World War III, such as the Cuban Missile Crisis, the Korean War, and the Vietnam War. There was also many spies that helped create a lot of the propaganda in the wars.
The type of propaganda that was used was good because the Soviets were out of control in creating and performing unethical things. Kids were being taught in school how to hide under a desk if the Soviets were to launch a nuclear attack.
People say this is a bad thing, but the Soviets were unpredictable at the time. Spies on both sides helped create a lot of the propaganda that was spread.
It frightened the U.S. gravely and created a nuclear arms race and a bunch of proxy wars.
The Cold War was unjust because we were interfering with other countries' government, weapons, and problems. The U.S. shouldn't have interfered with communism because it wasn't our problem. It gave the U.S. more enemies, and we spent a lot of money.
If the U.S. can have nuclear and biological weapons, why can't the Soviets? Not allowing them is hypocritical and unfair. What if the Earth is engaged in a nuclear battle and the Soviets didn't have any weapons?
It would be turned into a frozen wasteland. Cities and towns would be covered in nuclear waste and eventually become non-existent because of the snow.
The propaganda was unethical because it gave the U.S. citizens a politically incorrect view on the Soviets and communism.
It was so severe that kids would casually say, "Kill a commie for mommy."
This, like anything, has some truth to it. However, it is incorrect because the U.S. was and still is a superpower. If a country is getting out of control and could possibly harm or destroy other countries based on their threats, then a country has the resources to stop them.
If someone killed a child, it's the police's job to find them and stop that horrible man. This analogy applies to this situation. We shouldn't allow the Soviets to have nuclear and biological weapons because they could have engaged the world into a World War III.
Technically, we couldn't stop them from having weapons, but we affected their buildup with propaganda. The Soviets' ways and threats brought the U.S. government to the conclusion that it would be unjust for them to obtain weapons that could create mass destruction.
In conclusion, the propaganda era taught us very much about different people's outlooks on the Cold War.
It allowed people to express their opinions in the decisions the government made.
Although there was some stereotypes in the end, propaganda fulfilled its job. It programmed a nation.